is to think about a time in your life where you imagined, any time in your life, any age, where you imagined what was possible for you and what you thought you wanted to do or be or, chase after, and how you made that happen for yourself. Because that process of imagining and setting that intention is something that you can do over and over and over again. And indeed, I have done that in my life.
Get ready to reclaim your life, discover inspiring stories, practical tools, and the path to true happiness. This is Reclaim Your Life with Irina. Let's begin the journey. Welcome to Reclaim Your Life with Irina. Today we have a special guest joining us from Poughkeepsie, New York. Her name is Susan Brearley. She is the editor-in-chief of MuddyUm, the premier humor and comedy publication on MuddyUm.com. She has coached and influenced thousands of writers to trust their voices and write humor, comedy, fiction, essay, poetry, and more. She is a serial top writer on Medium, a published author, frequent anthology contributor. She is also a chef, poet, visionary, founder, entrepreneur, sailor, coach, and luminary who has been writing comedy since third grade. Welcome, Susan. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Irina, with you. And I'm, listening to you say all those things, it reminds me how busy I am.
Yeah, sometimes we don't even realize.
People sometimes ask me, like, how do you have time? And like, where do you find time? I schedule everything. I schedule my downtime. I schedule my walks. I schedule my massages. I have a calendar it's full of things, and I have to schedule all my things for myself into it, which is it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. So please share with us, who is Susan in your own words?
So it's such a great question, when you say, who am I? It is the defining question of our lives. Who am I? And I was watching a TED Talk recently. It was it's becoming one of my favorites now. It's by this woman who she grew up in the UK. Her family is Ghanaian, from Ghana. She is a filmmaker. Her name is Amma, Amma, Asante, Asante. And her talk is very much about, who am I? And, we go through these things in life where people say, so where are you from? Who are you? And they are defining us as society would define us. They are defining us as, what box do you fit in, so that I can understand who you are by my lenses, through my lenses, by my definition. But when we ask ourselves, who am I, we find out that we are a collection of things, right? We are a collection of not just what we do, but what we believe, sometimes the stories we tell ourselves. So I can say, well, I am a cancer survivor, and I am a writer, and I am an editor, and I am a sailor. And so that list that you introduced me, I sit down and say, what what are all the things that I do, and how do I define myself? I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. Right? I've survived corporate America. I've survived entrepreneurship on online retail, which and I've escaped all those things. If you ask me at any point in my life who I was, the answer would have been different. I think that's really common for people. You may go through a period in life where you say, who I am? I'm depressed. And of course, depression doesn't really define us. But when we're in it, we feel like that's all we're about. Yeah.
Yeah, this is so true. We are consumed by something, and that's what defines us in the moment. But you're so right, throughout our life, we have different phases, we have different passions or pursuits that pulls us uh, on a journey, and the definition can change and vary. But today, who is Susan today? How are you feeling today?
How am I feeling today? So, today I am very active in a writing community. I'm still very active in that, and I have been in that for quite some time. You know, there was a point in time, not all that long ago, when my first son grew up and moved out of the house, got married, had children. And then my second son went through college, and then he moved out of the house. And I sat here thinking, you know, as a mother, who am like, what do I do now? What are my plans? And realized I didn't have a plan for my life into the future. You know, for parents, it's really important to be thinking about what do you do when they grow up and are gone, particularly if your life is really defined by who you are as a parent. So when we're in the middle of that parenting thing, we're very much about, I'm a parent. I'm a parent of two children. I have, you know, I have a dog, I have a cat, I have a home. We're defined by those things. And so then who do we become? So there was a point in my life where my second son left home, and I was really sitting here wondering, what do I do next? My After some conversations, and I thought, you know, I bought into that whole thing about being retired, retired IBMer, retired from business, just retired. But I realized that there was, you know, it's not so interesting or fun to just sit around and do nothing. So, what do I love, right? What do I really love? And I was reminded by some friends and also my son who said, Mom, I think you might be depressed. Went to the doctor, and, you know, they ask you a series of questions. And the doctor said, sure enough, we think you're depressed. So here, take these, take these. This is not a depression medicine, by the way. Take these. And I came home and I looked up the prescription and I looked at all the side effects and said, you know, I'm not really interested in that. Let me go another way. So I got a coach, and a younger coach, younger than me, and started working with the coach and realized that I had not really set a goal for myself for, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It's when you're 60, close to 70, it's kind of challenging to think about how long will I live? Will, if I'm lucky, I'll get to be 100. That's, you know, less than 40 years from now, and almost less than 30. Like, I'm 66. So what do we do? How do we still think about that into our future? But having a vision of who you are into the future is a really important thing to do, because having this idea of where you're going is the thing that actually pulls us forward. So I sat and did that work and thought about what I loved. And what I loved was reading, what I loved was writing. And I started I started writing on MuddyUm.com. I started some publications, and I started attracting writers to me because I set an intention that I wanted to be surrounded by people who made me laugh. I wanted to laugh again. So, if you're sitting in a place of depression, what's the remedy for that? Is it a drug or could it be laughter? And what we know about people who go through the worst of the worst circumstances is that laughter can be the thing that lifts you up. You can make fun of the situation you're in, and if you do it with others, your spirits begin to rise. So that was my journey out of depression, and I found myself once again in community and with purpose. So if you ask me today who I am, I would say I'm a writer, I'm an editor, I'm a community builder. I'm someone who helps people find common ground and understanding. I'm someone who tries to help people realize their humanity through the stories that they read or hear from other people. And that gives me purpose. And so you can do this sort of thing, you can do this sort of activity at any age. I think that for anyone who is struggling with where they are right now, one of the best things we can do is pick up a pen and a piece of paper and start journaling. Where would you like to be? So this office space that you see behind me is something that I created using an AI piece of art called Night Cafe, which I really like. It's free. They give you 5 free credits every day so you can play and learn. At one point in a journal, I had sat down and imagined, where would I like to be? Where would I like to live? Where would I like to write? What does that physically look like? And I imagined myself in an office space, and you can see my desk back there, in an office space with beautiful glass views of the ocean, cliffside, the house being on a cliff, surrounded by pine trees. That was my vision. So when I was introduced to this AI art application, I started to work with it and said, let me design the office that I had envisioned I would write in. And that's what you see behind me right now. So it's just a piece of artwork right now, but it's just one step towards creating it in reality. Our imaginations, our stories, the things we think about for ourselves can become reality. And I would challenge your listeners to think about a time in your life where you imagined, any time in your life, any age, where you imagined what was possible for you and what you thought you wanted to do or be or, you know, chase after, and how you made that happen for yourself. Because that process of imagining and setting that intention is something that you can do over and over and over again. And indeed, I have done that in my life.
You're so right. And I love that you created that for yourself. Because I think Einstein said that imagination is better than knowledge. It's because it's in our imagination where we discover those things, that everything that we already want, we already have in realm of our imagination, and you bringing it to life by using this amazing application, Night Cafe. I think that's great. What are you passionate about?
What am I passionate about? I, at this point, am passionate about being of service in a greater community, creating community, building better communities. I'm passionate about helping new writers tell their stories, have their stories out there in the world so that other people can read them, sharing them, being courageous enough to be able to do that work. So that means I'm passionate about mentorship. I'm passionate about coaching. I think we need more mentors in the world. I make a distinction between coaching and mentorship because mentorship is very, um, it's a really very passionate form of coaching. Mentorship is something where you really are attached and invested in that person you're mentoring. You really want to see them succeed. And mentorship doesn't always come with a dollar amount attached to it. In other words, people don't always pay me for my mentorship. They pay me to coach them, but they don't always pay me to mentor them. And so mentorship means that there has to be a real reciprocity in terms of what am I giving? What do I receive out of that? What does the mentee give, put themselves into the process, and what do they receive out of that? So it's really a two-way relationship. Coaching for a lot of people who coach, they're not, it depends on what your motivation is. There's some coaches that really it's their job and they do it for money. But a real relationship where a mentor coach is another level altogether. So I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about leaving the spaces that I walk in better than I found them. And that was something that I learned when I was very young, is walk into a space and leave it better than you found it.
I love that last part. That's kind of my mantra as well. Leave it better than you found it.
Yeah, I think you do that too, Arena, with your podcast. You're leaving a mark on the world and you're leaving the spaces better than you found them. So kudos to you.
Well, I couldn't have done it without wonderful guests like you to share their powerful stories of transformation. So thank you for being here. What was that moment in your life that caused you to wake up?
Boy, that's challenging. Well, when I went through cancer, so I had many defining moments. You know, I had I had a moment when I was very young where I was really drinking too much alcohol and it put me in the hospital with a severe kidney disease. Then I was very, very sick for many weeks, and I had someone come and take care of me who was also a mentor of mine. And when I came out of it, the whole situation, she looked at me and said, "Wow, I've had 3 children I've raised. I've never taken care of anyone as sick as you were." And in that moment, I recognized that I was still young and I wanted to live. And it caused me to really reevaluate my relationship with alcohol to the point where I said, I will never do this again. So that was one big defining moment. When I had cancer, the doctors looked at me and said, you have 6 months to a year to live. And I had a 9-month-old son at the time. And I looked back at the doctors and said, you don't get to tell me that. I have a child. He needs a mother. I'm fighting this. We're fighting this. And coming out of that experience, I had the realization that I could have once again died and that life is a gift. It's a precious gift. And how we use that gift is so important. But bigger than that, that when I didn't die and people all around me wanted to hear my story about this, I recognized that having gone through this experience was bigger than just being about me. that the people were hearing my story were so inspired by the story that I recognized that my story was here and my life was still here to be able to tell that story, share that story, to be able to inspire people. And that when we do that, when we share our stories, we never know who will be listening to our story and say, oh my gosh, your story, I'm so glad I heard it. It made the difference in my life. And there was a turning point. So we don't always have to go through cancer to be touched and inspired by what happened to you. Sharing our stories, we don't know who will hear it, when they will hear it, or how they will be touched, and how it might be exactly the message they needed to hear right in that moment. And that came out for me in a big way coming out of the cancer experience. And then this last experience, having my children leave home and sinking into a depression. Again, there was this moment of, is this how I want to spend the rest of my life? Is this who I am? A depressed, cranky old lady. And I dug deep and said, no, that's not who I am. It's really at my core not who I am. What do I want to do? I want to laugh. And I thought about, when was the last time I laughed really hard? And I thought about being a child, and my stepfather would bring Mad magazines and funny stories, and he would make us laugh. And I thought, wow, I want to be like that again. I want to laugh again. I want to have fun again. How can I do that? Even in the face of all the things that are going on in the world, all the rise of fascism and climate change. And there's enough in the world that if we focus on that, will just make us more depressed. It doesn't change reality, choosing how you want to be in the world, but it makes it easier to live. And we are alive. And this is a miracle that we're alive. And it's a gift. So, how do we choose to go forward? And so that moment was a defining moment also, to say, I'm going to die someday and I don't know when it is. And it's sooner than I'd like because I'm getting old. How can I treasure every moment from now until that day comes and enjoy it, laugh, and be in community with people who think that way too, who'd like to be together? So I started a publication. I started writing.
I love that. Through challenges in life, and first with alcoholism and then cancer recovery and then children leaving your home, I think what kind of brought you forward is what is it that I want to do? Who do I want to become? And I love that part. When was the last time I laughed really, really hard? I think we forget. Oftentimes we become bitter, just like you said, because when we pay attention to what's going on in the world, we focus our attention and our energy, and we forget about all the amazing things we have in our life already. And, bringing it back, when was the last time you laughed really hard? I think that is important thing to recognize, because what do we want to create in the end of the day? I think we have, on any cemetery, there is a tombstone and there are two dates and a dash in between them, and that dash is a life. And how do we make a life worthwhile? How do we make it, worth remembering, and live a life without regret? Because the greatest regret of dying is not trying the things, not doing the things that bring us joy, and not being afraid to fail or to mess up, but to try it, because then you have an experience of trying something instead of just wasting it away. And just like yourself, when I was in my deepest, darkest moment, I just wanted to be happy again. I didn't know how, when, what, but I think it is a journey to discover who you are, and then what brings you joy. what are your passions? Because no matter how old you are, you still have a little 5-year-old inside of you with the things that bring you joy. And oftentimes in the living of our life, we forget those little tiny things. And maybe other people would say, "Oh, you are too old for this." Like from in my case was like, why did I wanted to start learning how to sing when I was 36 years old? It's for little kids. But I'm glad I stuck with it, and kind of that pulled me out of my depression, my not just that, but other things. But this was the one kind of important component, this pursuing your passion, no matter how silly it is.
Yeah. I love what you said about regrets too, and the cemetery stone, the two dates and the dash in between, and that's your life, the dash in between. Well, I want a big fat dash. I'm not literally. I now you said that I'm gonna have a tombstone with like little years and a big fat dash in the middle. But I remember this idea about regrets. I remember being a teenager. So, this is the power of intention and how it pulls you forward in your life. So, I remember looking around my community when I was a teenager and hearing stories from all my elders, and they would all be old and telling stories about all the things they didn't do, all the things they didn't get to do. And it just seemed to me that I heard more stories of regret than I heard stories about joy. And I remember thinking and setting this intention. This is before, so when is this? Like the 1970s? Yeah, 1970s. So I'm a teenager. So it's before all this talk about intention setting and manifesting and all of that stuff, right? It's before that time. And I remember thinking to myself, I will not, I will get to the end of my life with no regrets. This storytelling that these people around me are doing, these older people are doing, where they're being regretful about their lives, that will not be me. I will have no regrets. Now, I was setting an intention at that point, but I didn't know because I had no language about, oh, this is how you do it. I didn't have that language, but I set that intention. And indeed, at every point of my life, especially at the big turning points, I remember going back. That intention acted like an anchor because I remember at various points of my life going back and saying, do I have regrets now? Now that I'm 25, now that I'm 30, now that I'm 35, do I have regrets? Nope, I do not. And I remember consciously all along the journey going back to that anchor point where I set that intention and saying, do I have regrets? Now, even though I could say I have no regrets, does that mean that I didn't have hardships? Well, you can tell by what we're talking about today that, of course, I've had hardships. I've had some of the most difficult challenges and hardships in my life. I have done well with money. I've lost it all, been in poverty several times in my life. I have been through a lot of experiences, and not all of them have been amazing. Some of them really stink. But coming out of those experiences, staying open, staying curious, always reflecting, who am I through this experience? Can I have the patience with myself? Can I give myself grace that this is where I am now? This is where I am. It's not who I am. It's an experience I'm having. Something's going to come out of it. I don't know what. I can't see it. It really stinks in the moment. But coming out of all those experiences, I have no regrets because I handled them in a way where I was true to myself, where I was able to say, yeah, I did the best I could under those circumstances. I did the best I could. And maybe I wasn't always my best self, and I had a lot of days where I wasn't my best self. And you know what? I have the patience and grace to give myself grace to say that's okay. It's okay. You were going through some stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, life is not all unicorns and rainbows, but it's what we make of it, what we make of the events and experiences in our life. And speaking of that, what were the three biggest lessons you learned as a result of your wake-up call?
The three biggest lessons. Um, so in the nonprofit that I founded just recently in the last 5 years, and then I'm the executive director for, we have a set of simple rules, and I would say those simple rules in that space are also that are embedded there for how to operate, with patience and grace. Those simple rules are the lessons, right? So the first one is respect all the spaces. So what does that mean? Well, our conversation is a space. My spirit is housed in this space that is my body, and so is yours. We walk in spaces inside our homes, our communities, and all the territories in which we live. So just respect all the spaces, and that includes your own space, self-respect. Now, what does respect look like? You can go down a rabbit hole of definition, but respect all the spaces, be kind, be civil. The second one is be curious, stay curious, ask questions, even if they feel uncomfortable to ask, because we know that you cannot be truly curious and be in judgment at the same time. So if we can convert our judgment into curiosity, we will have a much different experience in the world. It's, people may conflate. They may think, well, you ask a lot of questions, so you must not know anything. You must be really stupid. They're conflating your curiosity with your wisdom. And I'm very quick to explain to people, please don't conflate my curiosity with lack of knowledge or lack of wisdom, because they're two different things. And then just be open. Be open to life's infinite possibilities. We live in this infinite universe. What does that mean? It means that everything is possible. So when I say everything, I mean everything, all the positive and all the negative too, right? Entropy and chaos. It's all possible. But the way our brains work is we get to choose what we focus on. And what you go seeking for, you will find that. You can't help but find what you look for and what you focus on because it exists. So when we come to the realization that everything is possible and I will see what I focus on and what I look for, you can totally change your frame of reference about what you see and experience in the world.
You're so right. What you focus on expands. Where your attention goes, energy flows. And we will always
Exactly.
find what we are looking for because our mind always wants to prove us right.
Exactly.
It doesn't know if it's good for us, bad for us. You think about it, you got it. You think you are sick, you'll be sick. You think you are wealthy, you'll be wealthy.
Exactly. And we get to change our experience by what we choose. It doesn't mean that reality isn't real. It is. And it doesn't mean that you're turning your back on reality, because you're not going to change the world. You're not going to change reality just because of what you focus on, but you will change your experience of it.
Yes, so, so true. And I do love your lessons, respecting all the spaces, staying curious, and being open. I think those are important lessons in any circumstance, with respecting spaces, just like you said. When you come, wherever you are, just respect that place and, don't assume, don't make judgments, don't make assumptions. And I love the staying curious part, because when you're curious, you kind of open yourself to possibilities, like to the next point, and you get to learn more about something you didn't know before. And being open always allows us, open to everything and attached to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Being open to experience whatever comes and seeking what you find. So, given the lessons that you learned, what is your mission now?
My mission now is twofold, really, is working in this space of building better communities, because I think when art, and what do I mean by better? It kind of infers that there's a problem. Well, if I look into reality, there are some real problems in the world, right? Where people misunderstand each other, they jump to conclusions, they're not staying open or curious. So teaching these principles is really important to me, because I think if people understand them and really embrace them as a lifestyle, to define who they are, to help them define who they are, that their core really will come out and shine, and communities will build, and they will be stronger, and people will be together in problem solving, as opposed to this thing that's going on where people are feeling, kind of punchy, right? They want to, right, like one of my another favorite TED Talk is by Loretta Ross, and the title of it is "Don't Call Them Out, Call Them In." Right. So, if you call somebody out, you're shooting an arrow at them. You're basically saying, you are bad, you're wrong. But there's no curiosity in that, only judgment. And so, how do we call people in for a conversation where I get curious and try to understand? So, building better communities, that's number one. And then number two, let's try to rebalance how we walk in the world with each other in this gender space. So, to that end, the nonprofit that I founded also is an incubator space for women's voice, agency, and leadership. And the writing work that I do on MuddyUm.com helps provide a space for all genders, really, but particularly focused on women, to help them reclaim their voice and agency, and hopefully step into leadership positions where they feel the agency that they can fully contribute to society.
Beautiful. I love your mission, building bigger communities and helping women reclaim their voice. I think that is incredible, because for many years we have been silent. We have been something to be seen but not heard from, and comply and do things that are convenient for other people, and meanwhile digging a hole for ourselves, and then forgetting who we are and being in that place of not knowing. And so
Exactly.
I love what you bring, and I love the mission that you have.
Thank you, Rena.
Yeah, thank you. Who was your hero growing up? Did you have a
Uh,
hero growing up?
oh, my grandmother. Definitely my grandmother. I mean, she was she's definitely my hero, I mean, if you can call it that. But she was my idol. She was my mentor. She was a PhD clinical child psychologist at a time when it was a field dominated by men. But she was strong. She was feisty. She was not taking no for an answer when her biological father said to her when she looked at him as a little girl and said, I'm going to grow up and be a doctor. And he looked at her and said, no, you're not. You're a girl. You're going to grow up and be a mom and have children, which she did do. But then she went back to school and got and became a doctor. So she was my everything. When she died, I was so distraught. But I realized, when I got to a point where I had these great women mentors, I got to a point where I realized, okay, they're all gone now. So now what? Where do my mentors come from? And I realized that mentorship doesn't necessarily have to come from somebody who's older than you. It can come from any place. In fact, in some indigenous communities, the youngest person in the community can be the person who is the wisest. And I experienced that with my son. I call him the Zen master because he's always so profound in his comments to me. So, when we stay open and curious, we can find that anyone can share wisdom with us. And it comes in all shapes and forms. And it doesn't have to just look like a certain thing. It doesn't have to look like an old guy with a beard and wrinkles. Right? It could look like it could come in any package.
That's right. You're right. What were the qualities that you wanted to emulate from your grandma?
Um, she was strong. She had a strong voice. She had all those things, voice, agency, leadership. She had all those things. And she gifted me with the knowledge because she gave me a safe space to play in. She gave me the knowledge to my core, right? She really instilled this in me that I could do or be or become anything because of, not because, look, I will say this, I am white. I have the advantage of white privilege, and that does not escape me at all. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that I knew I had a voice. I didn't know the language behind this when I was young, but I knew people listened to me. And we have voice when we know we're seen and heard. And so the nonprofit that I founded, we envision a world where all women are seen and heard. It's our evolutionary baggage that we've been told no so many times, we begin to believe it. We begin to believe the message of sit down, be quiet, don't make waves, smile and wave, be of service to everybody else all the time. You don't, you're not. How we are with ourselves and what we believe about ourselves in having our own voice and agency, our ability to determine our lives and create our own lives matters when we step into any leadership position anywhere, in any capacity. And so today, like we're working on a curriculum for women's leadership. We call it the Women's Leadership Institute. What we know is today's business schools, for instance, are really written by men for men. So if I am given a paper that says you need to be better at emotional intelligence, which is really excellent advice for men, if as a woman I get that paper and I go, I start to self-gaslight. I start to say, oh, how am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it wrong? But we invented that. We invented that emotional intelligence thing. So don't be giving me a paper that says you need to be, here's how you need to improve at this, right? Women have a different path to leadership because of that evolutionary baggage. So So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, it does. You were able to, emulate, building now leadership for women. What you have seen in your grandma, you were able to absorb, and now you kind of teach others how to do the same. So well
Exactly.
done.
Thank you.
What was the book? I don't know whether there was one or many that had a profound effect on your life or changed
Oh,
your life for the better.
oh wow. So there's so many books. I mean, I've been a voracious reader. I try to read 200 books a year, and I don't always get there, but I can get close some years not. There's so many. You know, when I was little, Alice in Wonderland was a profound influence. This we always talk about going down the rabbit hole, literally. It comes from Alice, right out of what Alice in Wonderland, right? That was a huge influence. There's also a book called The White Stag. Um, it's a story of the Mongolian tribal sweep across Europe, and that captivated me as a child. There were also a series of books that were captivating to me. Like I was really a fan of horses, and they knew that, and so but a big reader. Like I was reading full books and all the things on the library shelves by the time I was 3. So they would give me books that said, here's a story of a horse, but it was the horse lived in Africa, in the Sahara, or the horse lived in England, or the horse lived in, Russia. So they would find these books where horses were living in other cultures. So as I was reading, I was learning about other cultures. That made a huge difference, a huge imprint on my life, because I lived in a community that was really, there was no diversity whatsoever. And so then I would read these books and think, wow, that is this just fantasy? But is the world must be different than what I see here. So I want to go out in the world. I want to learn more about it because it's fascinating to me. I want to be part of the full world, not just this little corner of the world. And indeed, I've been able to do that. So I've been very blessed that way. But now here I run an Airbnb, and I have rooms. People come literally from all around the world to come here, and I have friends from every continent, and it just feels like such a blessing. I don't even have to travel, they come here. So that's just been a really wonderful experience.
That's amazing. So reading encouraged you to explore other cultures and to travel, to see the world, because yeah, not everything is like we see in our backyard. There are
Exactly.
different things that we could bring, some good things that we can bring and introduce. So I love that.
Absolutely. And the more we connect with each other, and this is part of that community too. Community doesn't just mean the physical community you're in. We've been exploring in the Garden of Neuro Institute, this nonprofit, we've been exploring, what does community mean? What does it look like? Is it just physical? And as we explore, we find out it's not. It's not just your neighborhood. Community means so much more than that.
Yeah, yeah. What was the smallest thing you've done that had the biggest impact in your life so far?
The smallest thing that I've done that had a big impact on my life. Um, well, that's really funny because, can I do, do I think, like, I don't think all the things that I've done are small things. I think they're all big things. I think every time you plant a seed, it's a big thing, disguised as a small thing. So there's nothing that we actually do that is a small thing. They're all big things. So what do I mean by that? Think about this. If I plant a seed and then I water it and it grows, it's a big thing. Caring for the smallest seed is a big thing because it grows up into a big thing. which then influences all the spaces around it. So if I plant an acorn, it grows into a big oak tree. But I could say, well, it was just a little thing planting that acorn, but that was not a little thing. That was a big thing. Because that acorn is going to grow up and be home to a whole lot of wildlife. It's going to produce a whole lot more acorns, right? So all the seeds we plant, we may think that's a little thing, but it is not. It is the biggest thing you can do is plant a seed and water it. So we plant seeds all the time. We plant them in real life in the ground, but we also plant them through our words. We plant them through our deeds. These little things are not little things. They're the biggest of things.
You're right. It could seem small in an instant, but then years later, you turn around and that was actually the biggest thing.
And I will just say this about that. We never look at an acorn and say, you're going to grow up to be an apple tree. We never do that. But we do that with humans. We look at a human and say, you're going to grow up to be a doctor. But why? What does the acorn know about itself? The acorn inherently knows it will grow up to be an oak tree. Can we get to a place where we trust that this seed, this little human, has inside it the knowledge to know what it will become?
It doesn't yet.
Think about that, right? How could we change our human experience if we trusted each other at that level? And just watered their experience.
You're right. You're right. What is your superpower?
Oh boy. I often tell people that their superpower is their empathy. A lot of people, I've talked to people, and I'm very empathetic. I think empathy is a superpower. I probably have others too, but I'll just talk about empathy for a minute because I think it's such a big deal. Um, I've had people say, oh my gosh, empathy, you know, I think it's a curse. And I say, I think it's a superpower. Because think about it. It's like being an octopus. You know, the octopus has like a brain in all its legs, and it has the ability to um, make it has different stimuli, it has different feeling, and it can do different things simultaneously with its legs. And empathy is like that. If I go into a room, and I can be overwhelmed in a big room with a lot of, if I don't know how to control my empathy. If I go into a room, I literally, like an octopus, can feel the energies in the room. I can feel how people are feeling. And if there's too many people in the room, I literally can overwhelm myself if I'm absorbing all of that at the same time. And that can feel overwhelming. And I know people who have said, I, my family tells me, why do you cry so much? Why do you feel this way? Why do you feel so passionately? Why, all of those things. But those are superpowers. How much we feel, how much we're in tune with how someone else feels. Unfortunately, there are people in the world that also take advantage of people that have tremendous powers of empathy. And so those of us who do have a lot of empathy have to be careful that we don't, that we know how to pull back the legs, right? Pull back a little bit and protect ourselves so that we don't harm ourselves. We have to learn how to use that superpower, but it's definitely a superpower. It's definitely one of mine.
I love that. I think it gives you ability to feel how people are in their shoes. And when you communicate, when you connect with them, you come across like somebody who cares, who understands. So I think that is a great superpower to have.
Yeah. And if you're
But
doing coaching and mentorship, empathy is very important.
yeah. What would you like? What do you want to create next? Any fun projects you're working on that you like to share?
Yes, we're having a writers conference, a writers retreat, rather. It's a retreat, it's a workshop. There are writers, like really well-established writers. Tony Stubblebine, from the CEO from MuddyUm.com, is going to make an appearance. It's in October, the last weekend of October, at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, October 25, 26, 27. There's a whole team working on this with me. I'm producing it. I'm really excited about it. Scott Dickers is going to be there. He's the founder of The Onion, a satire publication that is really well established and still operating. We have poets, we have authors, we have every genre, we have, comedy, nonfiction, mystery, suspense, teachers, writers, poets. It's going to be a wonderful experience. It's Yeah, I'm very, very excited about it. And so I would say, if you're listening to this and you can come and you want to be in a community with writers, whether you're just starting on a writing journey, just starting on your storytelling, or you are looking at you're a seasoned person, you're going to get something out of this. It's going to be a great experience. Bonfire on a Saturday night, music, like a pub night. We're going to have a Quaker comedy service. So Quaker service is like everybody sits really quietly and they stand up when the spirit moves them to say something. But in a Quaker comedy service, everybody's quiet and you only stand up when you have something funny to say. And these are very funny. And then we're going to have an open mic so people can come up and do poetry or do comedy, or it's just going to be a weekend full of amazing connections with humans building better community.
Sounds exciting. Where would people can sign up for that?
They can go to eomega.org and then type in their search bar at their website at eomega.org. They can type in writing to be read, READ, writing to be read. That's the name of the workshop.
Awesome, awesome. We'll include it in the show notes. Are there any final words? Anything you like to share that I
No, I
haven't
can't.
asked?
Other than what we already covered, just, stay curious, be open to life's possibilities, respect all the spaces. Um, Life is this amazing, precious gift, and you know, just I treasure every minute.
Beautiful. Thank you. If people would like to connect with you or learn more about you, where would they go?
So, well, you can Google my name, Susan Brearley, and I'm all over the internet. And then, Medium is a good place because that's where all my writing is posted. So, you can read my comedy writing there. You can read my serious pieces there. That's pretty much my writing home at the moment. So, yeah, that's where.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure to have you. I really love the lessons that you learned and the life that you had lived and what you were able to experience, what you were able to take out, and now you're sharing it with others, you're passing it on, you know, improving women's leadership and being able for women to be heard and so that it's incredible. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you.
on. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you for all you do.